We are switching things up on Ron's Trains and Things right now. Hi, I'm Ron of Ron's Trains and Things, and if you'd like to see more model railroad tips, tools, and techniques, then be sure and subscribe down below and click that little bell icon so you can catch future videos. A few weeks ago, I uploaded a video on model railroad operations where I talked about planning for your first operating session on your layout. I talked about doing an inventory of your industries, a traffic pattern analysis to help you understand better what types of commodities are shipped to and from the industries on your layout, and also what types of places those commodities might come from or go to in the real world off of your layout as represented in staging. We also talked about taking that information and turning it into 4-cycle waybills that can help guide you as you move forward in your operating sessions. I promised you at the end of that video that I would come back in a few weeks and we would talk about using those waybills and making switch lists to help us in our switching operations as we carry out our operating sessions. And so today we're going to do just that. I'm going to show you exactly how I make my car cards for my model railroad, and then I'll show you on one cycle, on one portion of my layout, how I take the information from my waybills and make a switch list that helps guide my work in the operating session. So we're going to start out over at the workbench as I show you how I make those car cards, and then we're going to come back to the layout and we're going to do a little bit of operating today. To label my car cards, as I showed you in my previous video, I use mailing address labels with pictures of the cars and the car information on them. This helps to identify cars, which can sometimes be a challenge in N-scale due to the small reporting marks. I photograph each car and dump the photos into a folder on my computer. Then, using any basic photo editor, like Photo that comes with Microsoft Windows, I crop the photos so that it only includes the car. I then save the photo back to the folder. For the labels, I use a standard mailing label that is equivalent to the Avery number 8160. Go to the Avery website and download the template for the 8160 labels in your word processor's format. In my case, that's Microsoft Word. The templates match up perfectly. Insert one car's picture into each label and size it to fit your car card, leaving one line above the picture to print the car type and reporting marks. When you have a page filled, print the labels on a color printer and stick them onto your car cards. Now your car cards are ready for use. Now I'm over at the Wichita Falls portion of my layout. We're going to be working the Wichita Falls turn, which is the train that you see here on the arrival departure track. It's got 13 cars in the train that are going to need to be switched into the industries here in Wichita Falls. Here's a quick rundown of the industries we'll be working. First, we have Bell Processing, which is a scrap dealer in Wichita Falls. We have some interchange traffic in Katy Yard, an interchange between BNSF and the Wichita, Tillman, and Jackson Railroad. We have 4 covered hoppers hauling grain out of Dorchester Grain in Wichita Falls. We have an empty center beam flat car that's brought lumber to a local lumber yard on the team track just off the yard in Wichita Falls. And we have an empty coil steel car at Wichita Tool and Die. Now that we see the various cars at these industries that need to be switched out, we're going to take a look at their car cards and make a switch list to tell us exactly what work we need to do today. Here you see a switch list that I've made up for my railroad, the Texas, Colorado, and Western. This is a fairly simple switch list, but for what I need for a model railroad, it is adequate. You see at the top it has a place to write in information like the train that I'm working, the location where I'm working, and the date. In this case, this train that we're working is called the Wichita Falls Turn. So I'm just going to write that in here. And the place where we're working is Wichita Falls, and standard abbreviations will work perfectly fine in this case. And the date, I don't have a lot of space in any of this, so I'm just going to write the numbers. This is 3/3 of 2018. Now, you see we have columns in the switch list First, you see they're numbered. Those numbers don't have a particular significance. Mostly they give me a reference, but they also give me a place to check off my work as I do it. And then you see we have car information, the initials of the car and the car number, and also the car type or AAR designation. I have a place to mark whether the car is loaded or empty. That's the information that you can use or not use, however you choose. And then a place to write the destination. So the way I'm going to do my switch list is I'm going to start by working the cars that are in my train, and this stack of car cards are the cards that are in my train. So I'm going to start by just writing up here set outs. So everything underneath this list to begin with here are going to be my set outs. And now some of these waybills you're going to see are not fully complete, but they have enough information in it for us to be able to do what we need to do for our switch list. Here is the first car in my train. It is a gondola, a BNSF. Here's the car number, and it is going to Bell Processing. So I'm just going to write that in here. It is BNSF, and it's number 513001. It's a gondola. That's a GB. In this case, it is an empty, so I can just write MT there for empty. And it's going to Bell Processing. And then we just work our way down through this list. The next car I have is this tank car. This is an LPG tank car. And it's going to be switched to some industry down the line at the Wichita, Tillman, and Jackson. And so here I'm going to write ACFX 17716 tank car. And it is loaded, and it is going, we're just going to write Katy Yard, because all we really need to know for our sake today is the fact that we're switching it into Katy Yard, and we're going to put it in track 3. And so I'm just going to keep going down this list and doing that for each one of these cars until I get all of the cars in my train listed out here in order exactly where they're going. Now I've got all of the cars in my train listed out here, and I've put them in the order in which I'm going to switch them. So they're grouped by industry. And if you look at the destination line over here, you see Bell Processing. You see here Katy Yard Track 3. And these lines, of course, mean that they're repeating. So all of these cars here are going to go to Katy Yard in Track 3. Wichita Falls Tool. The team track, and then here's 4 cars that are all going to go to Dorchester Grain. Now that we've got all of the setouts listed in our switch list, we need to come back and write in the cars that we're going to be picking up as from the industries as well. So I'm going to come down under this, and I'm going to write pick up, a couple of lines. And then we're going to start pulling the car cards from the different industry tracks and listing them as well. We'll start with Bell Processing. You notice that this car from Bell Processing has this red card in it, which tells me that that car is one that they're still working. They're still loading that car. So that's going to set aside. We're not going to touch that car. But this car is another gondola that we are going to be picking up. And as you see here, this is an old Rock Island gondola, number 187507. It is a gondola, so that's a GB. In this case, it is loaded with scrap metal, and under the destination line, we're actually just going to write where we're going to be picking it up. Cell Bell Processing again. And we will work our way through all of those industries this way. This group of cards is the group that is coming from Katy Yard. So here we have a covered hopper, which is an old Mopac MP 724369. Covered hopper is an LO. It is loaded, and it's coming from Katy Yard, track 4. Okay. So then these other cards, my next card is also coming from Katy Yard Track 4, so I'll put a line under there. And in this case, we're looking at a box car, RBOX number 2093, box car that is empty. And so again, we're going to just continue this same process, listing out all the cars we're picking up, grouping them by industries, and putting them in the order in which we're planning to work those industries, so that we will have a good working switch list whenever we're done. Now I've got all of my pickups listed on my switch list here, and what I forgot to do and mention earlier was when I finished writing down all of my setouts, I counted and tallied all those cars. So I know I'm going to be setting out 13 cars. That's how many is in my train. Wrote my pickups here. My list kind of scrolled over onto the back side here, and when I got them all down, I counted them up, and you see I'm going to be picking up 11 cars, so I know that when I'm finished with my work, I should have 11 cars in my train ready to go back to North Yard. Now let's take a look up at the layout at how we are actually going to go about switching out these cars using this switch list that we've just made. With my switch list complete, I'm ready to start working Wichita Falls Yard. The Wichita Falls turn is on the arrival-departure track. The first industries we will work are Bell Processing and Katy Yard. To do so, we'll need to run around the first 7 cars in our train to work them from the other end. I'll leave the remainder of my train on the arrival-departure track and move the cars that I need to run around into yard track number 1. Then I'll run the power around to the other end of the yard to work these industries. I pull the cut onto the lead and then shove it into the working track. First, I need to pull the loaded gondola from Bell Processing. I move it into Katy Yard track 4 with the other cars that will be pulled for our outbound train. I then spot our empty gondola into Bell Processing. I can now check these 2 cars off of my switch list. Next, I spot 6 cars on Katy Yard track 3. I can pull the empty gondola from Bell Processing and the 4 cars from the Wichita, Tillman, and Jackson from Katy Yard track 4. I place all of these outbound cars back on yard track 1 until I'm ready to make up my departing train. Now I need to run back around the remaining inbound cars and shove them back onto the lead. I pull them into the working track. I have rather limited space for switching up on this end of Katy Yard, so I leave the 4 covered hoppers bound for Dorchester grain just beyond the clearance point on the working track, and pull the 2 cars for the team track and Wichita tool forward. I then back in and pull the empty car from the team track. I leave it on the lead for Wichita tool at the moment, and then spot my load of lumber on the team track. Next, I recouple to the empty lumber car, and shove it on back to grab the empty coil steel car in Wichita tool. Pulling these 2 empties off of the Wichita tool track, I temporarily spot them on the team track to get them out of the way, and I shove the boxcar back to its spot at Wichita tool. Now I can pull my 4 covered hoppers forward and spot them on Dorchester grain track 2, and pull the loaded covered hoppers from Dorchester grain track 1. I couple onto the 2 empties that I left on the team track and then shove the entire cut of outbound cars back onto the yard lead and pull them into the arrival departure track. Our work in Wichita Falls is almost complete. I run around all of the outbound cars on the main line. Then I couple onto the cars spotted on track 1 and pull them onto the lead. I then shove them back to couple onto the outbound cars on the arrival departure track. With a brake test done and clearance from the dispatcher, I'm ready to pull the train out onto the main for the return trip to North Yard in Saginaw, Texas. I think that when we get to the point of operating our layout, especially when we can share that operation in operating sessions with friends, is when the model railroad really comes alive and really becomes its most enjoyable and most fun. Making car cards and way bills and using them to form switch lists to help us to do switching operations and guide us as we work and run our trains enables us to be able to have those operating sessions in a way that makes our railroad make sense. It makes a connection with the real world. It gives us a sense of purpose and a sense of life. I know operations is one of the most enjoyable aspects of model railroading for me. And if you've not tried it, I hope that you'll give it a try. I think that you will really enjoy it, and I think you'll find it very rewarding. If you enjoyed this video, here's a link to some more videos that I know you'll enjoy as well. Also, check out my description down below this video where you'll find links to my Amazon page, my Patreon page, and ways that you can connect with me on social media. Be watching this weekend as the Down and Dirty Weathering Contest is going to be coming to a close, and you'll find links to the playlists with all of the videos from the contestants and the great work that they've done weathering some freight cars in this contest. So watch for that this weekend, and be sure and join me next Tuesday as I'll be bringing you another model railroading segment, and I look forward to seeing you then. Lizzie?